The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs, a case that is so shocking if you go back a few years and think about the life and reputation of Diddy, a self-made mogul. But now the question is, will this man ever be free again? Tonight, we welcome our viewers on both Court TV and Scripps News Group. Here's the story. Sean Diddy Combs is a legend in the music industry, known for founding Bad Boy Records and launching the careers of artists like the Notorious B.I.G. and Mary J. Blige. His debut album, No Way Out, achieved critical and commercial success. And beyond music, Combs ventured into fashion with his Sean John clothing line and co-founded the television network Revolt. But in recent years, Diddy's world has changed dramatically. In September of 2024, he was arrested on federal charges, including sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation for prostitution. Prosecutors allege that Combs operated a criminal enterprise, coercing women into sexual acts through threats, violence, and manipulation. The indictment details incidents of physical abuse and psychological intimidation. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. His trial began on May 5th in New York's Southern District. Testimony has included accounts from former assistants and associates describing alleged abusive behavior and coercive practices. Sean Diddy Combs remains in custody at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. His bail was denied due to concerns of potential witness tampering. If convicted, Sean Diddy Combs faces a possible life sentence. Think about that last line, potential life sentence, for a man who was living the life that he was living. Not only hundreds of millions of dollars in fame, but he ran with some of the biggest celebrities in the world, like Jay-Z. Well, here Suge Knight was a celebrity, but he's in prison as well. Biggie Small, Snoop Dogg, you've got Ashton Kutcher, Demi Moore, the famous white parties. Everybody wanted to, there's the mayor of New York City. Everyone wanted to be associated with Diddy. And now here we are. He is a defendant in a sex trafficking trial in federal court and could spend the rest of his life behind bars. Well, the trial's going on, and you look at Diddy's life, and you look at the accusations, you look at Diddy's world, and you look at this trial. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation. And it's about who's taking the stand. What high-profile witnesses have testified in the case? Right? He's rubbing elbows with everyone. Well, who's getting on the witness stand to testify in this high-stakes trial? Here to help answer that question, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who is in New York City, and Lauren Conlin, host of the Outlier podcast. She's also a reporter for Pop Crime TV and has been inside this courtroom as well. Both of you have a really inside look at everything that's happening. Thank you for being here. Kelly, let me start with you. What have we seen in this trial so far?
Hi there, Vinny. Well, we've seen a lot, and we've seen a lot of high-profile people come and take the stand so far. Kid Cudi was one of them who talked about how he believed it was Sean Combs who torched his Porsche. We also heard from Cassie Ventura, Sean Combs' former longtime girlfriend. Also Capricorn Clark, who said that Sean Combs kidnapped her to go over to Kid Cudi's house. We've also heard from a number of personal assistants of Sean Combs who said that they were responsible for setting up those hotel rooms and bringing items like the baby oil, the Astroglide, to get those hotel rooms set up for those freak-offs. We do have a background piece that we can share with our viewers, so why don't we go ahead and play that now. Cassie Ventura took the stand and testified about the so-called freak-offs she allegedly endured at the hands of Sean Combs.
It basically entails the hiring of an escort and setting up this experience so that I could perform for Sean.
The jury saw video of Combs beating Cassie in 2016 at a hotel, and they heard her testimony about allegedly being physically, mentally, and sexually abused by Combs.
He would mash me in my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head if I was down. He raped me in my living room.
Rapper Kid Cudi told the jury he dated Cassie, and when Combs found out, he allegedly broke into his home and blew up his car.
Do you recognize what's depicted in these photos, Mr. Muscati?
Yes.
What is it?
The damage from a Molotov cocktail in my Porsche.
People who worked for Combs testified he often threatened them.
What, if any, threats would Mr. Combs make to you?
Y'all are going to pay for it. It's always you do this, or else something bad will happen to you.
And they testified they saw Cassie be physically abused.
There was tremendous commotion and scuffle, and then, after the glass crashed, Cassie screamed, "Isn't anybody seeing this?"
How frequently did you observe Mr. Combs being violent with Ms. Ventura?
Frequently.
The second of 4 alleged victims in the indictment took the stand, a woman identified only as Mia, who was one of Combs' personal assistants.
He has thrown things at me. He has thrown me against the wall. He has thrown me into a pool. He has thrown an ice bucket on my head. He has slammed my arm into a door. And he has also sexually assaulted me.
Did Mr. Combs sexually assault you on one occasion or more than one occasion?
More than one.
The defense says Combs did not force anyone to work for him or to be sexually involved with him, and that the amount of time people stayed shows he is not guilty.
Isn't it true that Mr. Combs never had unwanted, non-consensual, forcible sexual contact with you? Isn't that true?
What I said in this courtroom is the truth. I have not lied to anyone at all.
So, Vinnie, interesting testimonies so far that we have witnessed inside this federal courtroom, which is right behind me. Obviously, court's not in session right now, and tomorrow we're going to begin starting a little bit later, at 11 a.m.
Let me ask you, Lauren, about the atmosphere. This is a celebrity trial because the biggest celebrity of all is the defendant, who's there every day. But then you've got folks coming in. What is the atmosphere like inside the courtroom and outside the courthouse?
Well, Vinnie, it's pretty much a circus, I have to say. We line up, the press starts lining up pretty much around 6 a.m. if you want a spot in the actual courtroom. There are also spots for the members of the public as well. There's only 14 spots for them, so a bit less. So they get there a little bit earlier, and tensions are high. And just yesterday inside the courtroom, there's this woman that has been coming to court every day. She was the first one on the list for the public. And she's inside the main courtroom before the jury gets in. They're going over some evidentiary issues, and she starts freaking out. She starts screaming that, you know, the press, Diddy, they're laughing at you. She told the federal marshal to pull out his gun. It was so ridiculous and inappropriate. So I would say tensions are pretty high, and it's pretty crazy that this man who was on top of the world, you know, you're showing all these photos of Diddy and Jay-Z and Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore, and none of his so-called friends really are in the courtroom. You see one friend come very consistently almost every day. You see his mother, and we've seen, I would say, 3 of his sons come pretty much regularly, but that's really about it. So it's kind of surprising to see that he really doesn't have a ton of support from, again, his so-called friends.
Yeah, that's amazing to put it that way, right? A guy, everyone wanted to be on the list. Everyone wanted to get close to him. Now no one wants to be near him, apparently. But Kelly, his family has been there supporting him. How would you... And the folks who are showing up, are people there trying to understand what happened here? Are they trying to get a glimpse of Diddy, a glimpse of Cudi and the others who are showing up? How would you describe what's happening there, the dynamic?
Vinnie, a lot of the people that are showing up really do support Sean Combs just in regard to not believing the allegations. We'll hear a lot of people say things like, well, these women knew what they were getting into. They wanted to stick around. They loved being on the private jets and flying all over the world. They could have walked away at any time. You hear a lot of people have that kind of commentary. But when you're inside the courtroom, it is an interesting dynamic because Sean Combs really directs his defense counsel. And we have seen times where the defense counsel will be cross-examining the witness, and then when they think they're done, they'll look at Sean, and then Sean will give them maybe a head nod to indicate, okay, we're good here. We don't need to ask any further questions. Also, I've noticed when he has had his children inside the courtroom, he will turn around and look at his sons, in particular one of his sons, and they do head nods to one another and mouth things back and forth to one another. I haven't been able to make out exactly what they've been saying, but it's been interesting to watch that interaction as well.
Yeah, also interesting in the sketches that we're seeing, Lauren, that the appearance of Diddy himself, he looks more age appropriate, looks more like me, right? His hair is getting a little more silver. What's been the most surprising thing from your perspective being inside that courtroom?
Oh my goodness, that's a loaded question. I mean, there have been so many dark allegations. I just, I understand what's going on. It takes a while to lay a foundation, but I think during the first week of the trial, I just found myself really wondering if it was necessary that we needed to know every detail of this man's distorted, in my opinion, sex life. I just didn't think it was necessary to bring up baby oil X many times, how big the bottles were, the brands, how many bottles were used in a freak off. Again, I understand they were laying a foundation, but a lot of this stuff during the first week of testimony with Cassie Ventura, I was just floored. I mean, completely floored that we needed to know all of these little details. And it's interesting that you bring up the way that Diddy looks right now. I've kind of said he looks like a Menendez brother in these crew neck sweaters. We're used to this man rocking these top labels, right? These beautiful $1,000 furs, and it's just pretty insane to see him dressed the way he is with ill-fitting khaki pants, etc. But I do think that some of the most powerful testimony actually came from the witness yesterday, Eddie Garcia, who testified about the Intercontinental video bribe for $100,000. I think this is the kind of testimony that we're going to see moving forward, which really seems to accelerate some of these charges like RICO, which I think a lot of people were wondering, okay, when is the prosecution going to get to what's on the indictment? When are we going to hear less about domestic violence, as horrible as it is, as awful as it is, but when are we going to hear more about RICO? And I think we're getting there, Vinny, or we're there, depending on who you ask.
Right. Kelly, in the build-up to this trial, there was a lot of people were wondering, what did the federal government seize from Diddy, and what sort of video evidence will be used in the case? Was this going to be a case where this jury's going to see videos of other famous celebrities? Has any of that transpired inside of the courtroom?
No. So the connection there has been, Vinny, when an assistant might take the stand and they worked for another celebrity. For instance, Michael Myers. So one assistant took the stand, said that she had also worked for Michael Myers. So that was that connection there. But we've also heard about Michael B. Jordan, who was somebody that Cassie had then a relationship with. Somebody was trying to set them up. So nothing really tying all of these big name celebrity names at this point, Vinny. So we haven't heard that just yet.
All right. Kelly Treff, Lauren Conlin, thank you both so much. Kelly's going to stick around. Coming up next, what's the impact of these celebrity witnesses?
The Court TV podcast will return.
And when you say that Cassie was attacked, who was she attacked by?
She was attacked by Sean Combs.
Again, at a high level, what did you observe of that attack?
He came down the stairs, screaming, belligerent, asking where his food was, and proceeded to hit her over the head and then kick and beat her on the ground in front of us.
After that incident, were there any other occasions when you observed Mr. Combs being physically violent with Cassie? Yes. How frequently? Often.
That's some of the testimony of Dawn Richard, who was a contestant on Diddy's reality show, Making the Band. And she has been called one of the witnesses that folks may very well recognize in this case. Now, this is a case, as you have figured out, there are no cameras inside the courtroom. So a big moment, oftentimes when you're talking about witnesses taking the stand, is folks arriving at the courthouse. In this case, the most epic arrival was by Kid Cudi. Let's take a look at this. It was a rainy day, but there he is with the cigarette. He's got the man holding the umbrella for him and makes his arrival into the courtroom. But because cameras aren't allowed inside, this is the closest you get to understanding who is testifying and how they are presenting themselves inside the courtroom. And they're celebrities, right? Kid Cudi, huge celebrity, and that brings us to the next question in our investigation. What's the impact of the celebrity witnesses? Okay? This is a celebrity defendant, and the prosecution is calling some celebrity witnesses to try to put him away for the rest of his life. Here to weigh in on our investigation, former federal prosecutor, president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani, and media personality, artist, and actor, Headcrack, with us as well. Great to have you both here. Nima, this is like an East Coast, West Coast thing. You're out there in the West, unfortunately. Okay, let me start with you, Headcrack. The reaction and impact of these celebrities now who've been coming in to testify for prosecutors. What's the buzz? What's the buzz with Kid Cudi and others coming into the courtroom?
I mean, it definitely puts it in a space of, let's just say if you have something that's on a table, it's nice, it's laid out for you, but the celebrity conversation is the decorative swizzle that makes it appetizing for everybody. I mean, people are always quick to click on things when they recognize the names that are attached to it, and it adds a lot more weight, I think, sometimes in the court of public opinion as to what's truly going on. I mean, like, all these stories that we've heard from, like, these assistants and all these other people, they've all been terrible, but for the media side of it, I think the more clicks have been going to the testimonies from people who have a little bit more names, and the fact that their stories are wild too.
Yeah, wild to say the least. All right, Nima, take us inside the courtroom, a federal courtroom. We're not in L.A., so it's not, you represent all these celebrities in L.A., and we're used to celebrities in courtrooms out there, but now we're in New York in federal court. What do you think the impact is of the celebrity witnesses being called by prosecutors?
Vinny, I mean, Headcrack is right. It has a huge impact. And jurors they're supposed to evaluate witnesses the same, right? But we know that they don't. The celebrity factor looms large, and it can be a celebrity defendant. They tend to do better at trials, whether civil or criminal. In this case, you have celebrity witnesses and victims. So, obviously we're covering this trial every single day, but I can tell you that the days that Cassie Ventura testifies, the day Kid Cudi testifies, the interest in the case is exponentially higher. And those jurors, they can't help but be influenced by that star power. Jurors are ordinary people. They don't leave that behind when they walk into that courtroom. So it doesn't matter whether you're in LA, New York, or anywhere in this country. When Kid Cudi walks into that courtroom, when Michael B. Jordan, we expect to walk into that courtroom at some point, when they testify, that is going to be a big day in this 2-month trial.
Okay, Headcrack, give us a little more background on the level of celebrity we're talking about here. For those of us who aren't necessarily Kid Cudi followers, we may not have downloaded all of his music, but Kid Cudi, Cassie, and perhaps Dawn Richard, what level are we talking about here?
I mean, you spoke on it earlier. I mean, Dawn was a part of Making the Band, which is a huge thing on MTV before it became the Ridiculousness channel. That was a big vibe. Cassie, I mean, granted, we don't know her largely for her music because there was that one single, Me and You, that, got a lot of burn, but it kind of stops there. But she's been a name in the fashion space, a name in the modeling space. She's been the woman that's been closely associated with Diddy, among the others, for the last, 10, 15 years. So, so people are aware of her. And when you talk about Kid Cudi, I mean, this guy's influence goes beyond music. It also goes into fashion, also goes into film. He did a project on Netflix not too long ago that was semi-animated. So he checks quite a few boxes and doesn't just occupy one slot. So, you know, these names definitely ring bells. But, you know, the bigger names, like my man was talking about, Michael B. Jordan, we can't wait to hear from him. Will J-Lo be summoned? You know, inquiring minds want to know.
J-Lo didn't show up to the first Diddy trial. She's not showing up. I was there every day waiting for her. She's not, I can't imagine she shows up for the second one, but you never know. If you're subpoenaed, you're subpoenaed. Nima, does the prosecution need celebrities to take down a celebrity of the level of P. Diddy?
I don't think they want celebrities in this case, Vinny. Look, you're looking at those civil lawsuits. There are a lot of allegations that were made in those lawsuits that aren't coming up in this trial. And I'm not going to name names, but people thought that, you know, we're going to peek behind that Hollywood curtain and we learn about these drug-induced orgies and the Illuminati. There's a lot going on. We're not hearing about any of it. Look, we've heard about Usher. We've heard about the attack at Prince's house. But we're not getting these individuals subpoenaed and showing up at trial. And even during jury selection, they asked about Mike Myers, they asked about Kid Cudi, they asked about Michael B. Jordan, but they didn't ask about all the other celebrity names that have been thrown around on social media and in these civil lawsuits. I think the DOJ wants to keep this case tight, keep it narrow, focus on just these victims, because look, you bring everything in and all those allegations, 100 or more, it'll truly be a circus, much bigger than Lauren is even dealing with and Kelly every day.
Yeah, I mean, the level of this case is so huge that despite the fact that the cameras aren't inside, everyone is following everything each and every day. Head crack Nima Rahmani going to stick around. We've got more to get to, folks. We're taking a deep dive into the Diddy sex trafficking trial. Up next, what members of Diddy's inner circle have testified?
Back to the Court TV podcast.
I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs, a man who had famous friends, hundreds of millions of dollars, and was surrounded by family. Now he's locked up and fighting for his freedom in New York. It's an incredible fall from grace. And tonight, we welcome viewers on both Court TV and Scripps News Group. Take a look. Here's the story. Sean Diddy Combs, once a towering figure in hip-hop and business, is now embroiled in a federal trial in New York, facing charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and related offenses. Arrested in September of 2024, Combs has pleaded not guilty and remains detained at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. The trial began on May 5th and has unveiled disturbing allegations. Prosecutors assert that Diddy operated a criminal enterprise spanning 2 decades, coercing women into drug-fueled sexual encounters, often referred to as freak-offs. Key testimony includes that of Cassie Ventura, Combs' former partner, who described years of alleged abuse, which was corroborated by surveillance footage showing Combs assaulting her in a hotel hallway. This high-profile trial has been dominating the news and social media accounts from the world of true crime and entertainment. The proceedings have been marked by intense public scrutiny and a fierce legal battle in front of the jury. If convicted, Combs faces a potential life sentence. And I remember when this story was first breaking, there were things that were happening. And the first arrest was of a man named Brendan Paul, who was an assistant of Diddy's and was arrested March of last year, and it was a drug case. Here's some of the body cam video from that arrest, and you see him being taken into custody. And he was the alleged drug mule for Diddy. And for most of us covering this case, we're like, okay, this is the beginning. This is how you make a case, right? You get the drug mule, he faces charges, then he flips, he becomes, and then all of a sudden you make your case. as you build your case through all the people who have information about Diddy by arresting them and charging them and then forcing them to make a deal. And now we're seeing the trial play out. Well, we're not seeing it because there's no cameras, but we are certainly covering this. And it brings us to our next question about those closest to Diddy. And what members of Diddy's inner circle have testified. These are the people who are closest to Diddy, the people who may be working for him, part of his entourage or his employees. Here, still with us, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who's in New York City, covering all this at the courthouse, and also joining us, entertainment host Holland Reed. Thank you both. I want to begin, before we start talking, I want to take a listen to Alex Miller from Scripps News Group. She's national correspondent there, explaining the testimony that we've heard from some of these employees.
Vinnie, former employee after employee, taking the stand in Combs' trial, testifying to harsh work conditions and situations that often got physical or dangerous. Former assistants David James and George Kaplan testified to a grueling schedule, procuring drugs for Combs and setting up hotel rooms for freak-offs. James quit shortly after an incident where he was forced to sit with 3 guns on his lap in a car during a situation involving Combs' rival Suge Knight. Kaplan said he quit after seeing Combs get violent with Cassie Ventura and another girlfriend named Gina. Deontay Nash, a stylist for both Combs and Ventura, testified to seeing Combs beat Cassie and being assaulted by Combs himself. But the most shocking accusations thus far have come from Capricorn Clark and a woman being called Mia for protection. Clark testified to being threatened by Combs regularly during her time working for him, including on her very first day on the job. He also subjected her to lie detector tests, and she was regularly forced to work nearly 20 hours per day without meal breaks. She says she has stress-induced alopecia from her time with him. He once pushed her 30 yards, prompting her to quit. During her second stint with the mogul, Clark alleges he kidnapped her while armed with a gun to bring her to Kid Cudi's house, he said, to kill him. She was fired months later, and Clark says Combs told her she'd never work again and he'd make her kill herself. She says for the next 3 years she was unable to work and Combs was the reason. Mia testified in excruciating detail about the multiple times Combs sexually assaulted her, including raping her in the middle of the night in his home and forcing oral sex on her in his closet. She also told the jury about his temper, throwing things at her, chasing her out of his home, leaving her barefoot on the street, and hiding in bushes. Ventura and Don Richard, as part of Combs' label, were also technically his employees. Cassie, of course, the center of this case, and Don Richard testifying to seeing Combs attack Ventura. Richard also has a pending civil lawsuit of her own. Vinnie?
All right, big thanks to Alex Miller. Let me ask you, Kelly, this is so potentially devastating because these are the people who are very close to Diddy, the people who are working with him. What is the picture that they're painting about their relationship with Diddy?
Well, one of the things, Vinnie, that we heard David James testified to, he's one of the former assistants that has testified so far. He said during his job interview, he was told by Human Resources that this is Mr. Combs' kingdom, and we are here to serve him. And then we also heard George Kaplan in his inner circle talking about how he would have to clean up the hotel rooms afterwards because it would be excessive oil everywhere, candle wax. So really setting up this picture by federal prosecutors that Sean Combs used his fame, his fortune, and his power to get anything that he wanted, and it was impossible in a way to leave him.
Holland, should we be surprised, you know, in the world of entertainment that people would subject themselves to this type of conduct and still hang around?
I wouldn't say surprised, Vinnie. I would say it's been a part of the culture, which is why this is such a reckoning of the culture, because this is something that's been accepted for so long. I feel like there's like the who's who. We've got the chefs, we've got the assistants, we've got the bodyguards, the security guards. It's like a murder mystery. Who did it? Diddy did it. We know that, right? So now we're in this position of who's keeping silent, because I believe that inner circle that was there for all these decades have absolutely flipped, because whatever's on those tapes that the government has is exactly why they are not speaking up. They've either made plea deals or what have you. But then the people that are speaking up, that is a cultural, reckoning where it gives the credibility to the case. These people are high profile. They have they have everything to lose and nothing to gain by speaking out on this behavior. So I do absolutely full certainty believe that the silence is deafening, but also the people speaking out is a reckoning.
Kelly, is anyone saying anything positive about Diddy? Anyone from his inner circle providing, like another side of him or another side of what was going on?
Well, Vinnie, during testimony after some of these witnesses are done, it's very clear a lot of them did not want to testify. And you'll notice when they've walked off the witness stand that they'll do the head nod to Diddy. They have expressed on the stand that they have the utmost respect for him, what he would build, how he would help out in the community. They definitely, a lot of them, in a way, in spite of the violence they witnessed, in spite of the bad behavior, they felt that he was a genius in his craft.
So, Holland, how would you compare, like, we're all looking at Diddy now, and it's a much, when you say that word, different thoughts come to our mind at this point. How would you compare the before and after of Diddy's persona, his reputation, and the loyalty of the people surrounding him before and now after the charges?
I see it as mask on, mask off, mask on, mask off. When you are in that much power, you have the ability to create a world, a universe that anybody will believe, because you're painting the picture because you're in power. And now that the veil has been removed from a lot of these, the story, I mean, my goodness, we've been witnessing all of the stories and subjected, I like to say a non-consensual dumping of information that a lot of us did not want to have to listen to. We're seeing that, you know what, just like an Instagram reel that people were talking about, what some of the witnesses were talking about, none of it's real. So when you unveil that, you're starting to see the mask on, mask off. This is someone that had the ability, the money, the motives, the means, the people, the inner workings of an entire system. That's what this case is about. These people that are going on the stand, they're not on trial. Diddy is on trial. This is a RICO case. Let's all go back to that. We keep going. This is about abuse. This is not about the entertainment industry, so to speak. This is about him benefiting from abuse and by any means necessary doing that. So it's mask on, mask off, and that's kind of how I see it.
Kelly, is there any expectation that anyone from his inner circle is going to come in and testify for him and show us something else?
Defense counsel has indicated that they have a long list of witnesses and they are going to be putting on quite the case, Vinnie. I mean, in their opening statements, defense counsel was very clear that this is a situation where we had consenting adult women that were strong and that at times were successful in their own right. And they really weren't forced to stick around at all. So defense counsel is planning a very, very vigorous defense. And of course, it's the prosecution's burden, but we do expect the defense to put on quite the case.
All right, big thank you to Kelly Craft in New York and Holland Reed. Thank you so much for your insight. All right, still to come. Was Diddy's organization involved in sex trafficking?
Where did you see baby oil?
On the table, on the floor, on the bed, around the room.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Any other sorts of pills?
He did have ecstasy and Percocets in there as well.
Were you ever asked to pick up drugs for him?
I was, yes. We would be in Miami, and he told me that I had a prescription at a pharmacy for his Percocets.
Okay, an assistant allegedly getting drugs for a celebrity. Like, that's not earth-shattering, right? That doesn't make you go, oh my goodness, what is going on here? But that's part of the case that the government is bringing against Diddy as they try to build all of this. But it's not just drugs. It's also what everyone's been talking about, these freak-offs. Take a listen to this. 2 former assistants talking about getting the hotel rooms prepared for the freak-off.
Can you remind the jury what advancing hotel rooms entailed?
Yeah. Advancing a hotel room, it entailed bringing his personal items in. So when he arrived at the hotel room, it was a very comfortable environment for him.
For what supplies were you reimbursed differently?
So they'd be more of his personal items. So things like baby oil, Astroglide, condoms, prophylactics.
How were you reimbursed for those supplies?
I would go to security and ask for cash out of the medicine bag.
Who instructed you to pay for these sorts of things? Baby oil, lubricant, prophylactics in cash?
Bonds told me to do that.
What was your understanding as to why?
Because Mr. Combs would review the receipts and expenses, and he did not want that stuff ran through the company.
What do you remember seeing when you went into these hotel rooms after Mr. Combs finished his stay in them?
Lots of empty bottles, empty Gatorade bottles, empty liquor bottles, and often baby oil.
Where did you see baby oil?
On the table, on the floor, on the bed, around the room.
And what, if any, powder do you remember seeing in any of these hotel rooms?
There was a single occasion where I came across some sort of brown crystallized powder that I didn't know what it was, and I got rid of it.
So here you have people who work for Diddy, I guess part of his organization, who are getting drugs, baby oil, cleaning up, setting up, all of that. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation, and it's about his organization. Was Diddy's organization involved in sex trafficking? Is that what their purpose was? I remember in the R. Kelly case, those are the allegations that R. Kelly set up this organization just so he could sexually abuse women. Here with us, former federal prosecutor, president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers, Nima Rahmani, and media personality, artist, and actor, Headcrack. All right, Nima, I'm always a little skeptical of the feds, right? I'm always a little skeptical. I think of RICO, I think of the mob. I think of a way of getting to the Don, getting to John Gotti, who never personally does anything. Other people do things for him. When I think of sex trafficking, I think of young boys and girls being abducted and forced as sex workers. So explain to us how this case allegedly involves RICO, racketeering, and sex trafficking.
Vinny, you're right. It's typically for the mob or drug cartels or street gangs, but you can have a criminal enterprise like Bad Boy Entertainment. It just has to be one of the purposes, has to be an illegal activity. And obviously, look, you have Combs as the head, and you have these other people that are doing the dirty work, literally cleaning up after these freak-offs. You have sex trafficking, you have drug trafficking, you have prostitution, you have
explain the sex trafficking, though, because when you say sex trafficking, the image is we're going to the airport, we're abducting little girls and little boys at the bus station, we're throwing them in a van, and we're driving them somewhere. What's the sex trafficking that's alleged here?
It's not human trafficking, and this is probably one of the biggest questions we're getting. You know, how is this sex trafficking? It doesn't mean you abduct someone and lock them up in a cage and have sex with them or make them have sex with other people. You know, you pimp them out. That's not sex trafficking. That can be human trafficking. So what is sex trafficking? Sex trafficking is just a commercial sex act, which means that there's just a benefit to Combs, or really anyone, that involves force, fraud, or coercion. That's it. You don't have to be kidnapped. You don't have to be physically moved. As long as the sex is procured, in this case, by coercion or force, that's enough, Vinny. So obviously the coercion is all the drugs that were given to Cassie. And the force is, and the coercion is also holding these freak-off tapes over her head, extorting her. And the force is, you know, all the guns, the security, right? Her being afraid of him, her being physically assaulted by him. So you can get to sex trafficking two ways pretty easily, and I think it's been proven by the government through coercion or through force. That's trafficking.
Okay, hey, Craig, Nima said something really significant. He said it just has to be one of the purposes of the organization. Give us a bigger picture about Diddy's organization, what he's involved in, and, you know, what the people who are in this inner circle, the people who work for him, what they're doing, and how much of it involves baby oil and you know, the allegations here.
Well, I mean, when you look at the umbrella as a whole, I mean, the dude is in the world of entertainment. There's so many things that go into that, whether you're putting out projects, whether you're putting on events, whether you're doing promotional initiatives like he had with Vote or Die back in the day. Now, when you close the doors, you get into the personal life. I mean, when they talk about all the things that was going on at the hotels, the cleanup and the amounts of baby oil, nothing really illegal there. You just have a freaky client that you're an assistant for. There's no crime there. But I think it paints a larger picture in totality. And, I think with some of those things that he has the influence on as it matters in the alcohol space as well as the music space, there's a lot of palms that could be greased. There was one of the things that came up about how the fingerprints in the Kid Cudi situation kind of went missing. And that doesn't typically happen normally in crimes, unless you got somebody on the inside that you slip a little bit of money to, and maybe this is something that'll come out later on down the road. But we're hearing how easy he has it getting money to people to make things go away, even if it's just for a short period of time.
Let me ask you, Headcrack, any level of skepticism from the public about the level of charges here against Diddy, or are people more focused on the details of what the alleged conduct is?
It's a mixed bag. I think, by and large, women are very triggered by this. Even as a man, when I watch, like how he treated Cassie in the hallway, and you just hear all these other stories from the assistants, I also get triggered by this. At one point in time, this is somebody that, as a young man, I looked up to in the aspect of business, hip-hop, music, culture, because he was the American dream and was putting it on for people. And, as time goes on, you watch this person kind of like, fall into darkness. And I hate that component of it, and there was a part in the first couple weeks of the trial, I was convinced that he was going to walk. But as it relates to the RICO bingo card, as Nima was saying, a lot of things are getting checked off that box, and they got a steady case on the prosecution side.
Let me ask you, Nima, I go back to RICO. When I remember the first RICO cases, there would be, 20 defendants, 20 different guys with a lot of vowels in their name. I can say that, I'm Italian-American. And here, there's just one defendant. Why is there only one defendant in a RICO case?
Typically, Vinny, you're right. I had those same, I got the cork board in my office at the Department of Justice. I had, the head of the cartel and all the other individuals. Look, typically you bring everyone in, but you could have unindicted co-conspirators, right? And I think what the feds are trying to do here is, again, they're leaning on these people. So someone like Christina Joram, right? We heard a lot about her, her involvement in the $100,000 bribe to get that hotel surveillance video. She's someone that could easily be charged as a co-conspirator. She's the chief of staff, Diddy's right-hand woman, and she's potentially on the hook for a lot of the drug and sex trafficking, but they're going to lean on her. They don't want to throw a lot of bodies in at this. We're already dealing with a 2-month trial, so instead of charging all these individuals, they go and talk to their lawyers, and this is how it works. This is going to go one of two ways. You're either going to show up to trial and testify truthfully and cooperate, or you're going to be added to the next superseding indictment.
You're next, right? Nima Romani, great insight. Headcrack, thank you so much. Great to have you both on the program. Now, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, has prohibited cameras from all federal courtrooms, including the Diddy trial. That is very unfortunate, that a branch of our government would obstruct the public from watching the government prosecute one of its citizens and attempt to lock him up for life. Now, I'm not saying this is a wrongful prosecution or a rightful prosecution. And that's the problem. I don't know, because the government won't allow us to see it. And folks, that's just not right. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.